Hello and welcome to Mumming It, the podcast where we chat all things parenthood. I'm Harriet Shearsmith and I am indeed mumming it with my 3 kids, but I want to find out how other parents are navigating their parenthood and what that looks like. This season we're talking parenting through a pandemic, and don't forget at the end of every episode I ask my guests for their parenting hack. Smallest things that will make the biggest difference. And if you're a fan of hacks and life tips, don't forget to check out my book Mumming It, which is available to order now. I've got with me today Jess from The Only Girl in the House. We've known each other for ages, haven't we, actually? It was an event, wasn't it, where we met?
We did. We went to, it was very, very flash at the Ned Hotel on like a top floor somewhere. I'm pretty sure they sent the invitation to the wrong person when they invited me. But yes, that was where we first met, chatted, hugged, drank port.
I remember drinking port. I remember you being sat next to me, turning to me and going, "What are you drinking?" And that was pretty much our introduction. I was like, but they offered it to me and I didn't want to be rude. That summarises me completely, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought, good on her, she's going for the port.
Yeah, she's gone in there, she's gone hard. I didn't realise we could do that. And then I had to rush up and get a train home because the trains are ridiculous on the way back to the north. So that was our introduction.
Yeah.
For people that don't know you, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do on Instagram.
Okay, so on Instagram, basically, I just share everything. I would say that I have a niche or that I follow particular rules, but I don't. It's basically everything and anything that happens in daily life, because life is everything and anything. As a general rule, I have 3 boys. I do also have 2 stepsons. I was divorced, then in a long-term relationship, and now I'm single again. So I cover all realms of life after divorce, co-parenting, step-parenting, parenting boys. Oh my goodness, I really need to get this down into one sentence next time somebody asks.
See, that's one of the things I love about you, though, because you cover it all. And you're so right that life is not just one thing. It's so broad. And you know, I admire people that can stick into niches and things, but that's never worked for me either. It's kind of, okay, today I've got this because I'm cooking, and then tomorrow I've got this because this is happening. They throw you curveballs, those kids, don't they? They will throw you a curve. Yeah.
They just are curveballs.
Yeah, they're all about the curveball. You think that you've got something down, and then all of a sudden, whoomph, there's something else to talk about. So I love that about your channel and the things that you do, that you cover everything. And I find it really relatable, to be honest. It's mum life, isn't it, in its totality?
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, I do have a general thread of, people always say, you're always so positive. I don't mean to be annoyingly, irritatingly perky. That's far from what I am, and it's laced with hopefully a good amount of sarcasm. But generally, I find if I'm not going to laugh at it, then I'm going to cry. So laughing's definitely the better option for my mascara. So the overarching theme is positivity, and basically nothing is insurmountable.
Yeah, I think that's true, and never more so than now. I mean, I don't know about you, but more so than ever, I've found it really difficult to be positive, and especially throughout this lockdown in particular. I know last lockdown, I was like, right, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm in gear with this, and I can do that. And this time I've just been like, no, thank you.
So over this now.
No, thank you. Not for me. I'll pass on this one. And I've just found it really hard. I don't know. How have you found coping with parenting through lockdown? Because your separation happened through lockdown, didn't it?
Yeah, it would be really easy to blame lockdown and a pandemic. That would probably be the easiest escape route on that one. But again, the reality is it was 1,000,001 little things that led to it, that maybe, like for lots of people, lockdown and the pandemic highlighted quicker and in a more harsh light, that led to our separation. But for every single lockdown there's been, I've almost been in a different situation. I know for lots of people, every lockdown's been in the same house with the same people and very much the same. So the first lockdown, we were all stuck in one house, and after about a month or so, it was all too much. I've got a neurodiverse teenager. He was finding it really, really difficult. So after a month or so, myself and my 3 boys, we moved in with my mum. So that was kind of our first trial separation with my partner. So that was our first lockdown. The nice warm one. Then over the summer, when we'd kind of worked out we did want to really try as a family. And so for the second lockdown, we were all back together again. And it didn't feel so long, that second lockdown, did it? I've lost count of how long they were. And then, as you said, for the third third lockdown, we were separating. It wasn't, although social media can sometimes look as though things happen instantly, behind the scenes, it had been talked about over a course of a few months. But then for this third lockdown, got a new house, we've separated, the boys are settling in. So I'd like to be able to say that sort of, I'm bored of lockdown, but every single one has had its new and different challenges. So again, with the annoying positivity, each and every one has been interesting. Not something I necessarily want to repeat.
No, not that kind of interesting.
No.
But testing in and of itself.
Yeah, there's been like a project or something to work on, even if it is the crappiest of projects, even if it's, our relationships or my neurodiverse teenager, whatever it is, there's been something to focus on.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you have had a roller coaster of lockdown for certain. How are your kids finding now adapting to that separation in what is quite weird times? It's already a weird enough time as it is, and then throw separation into the mix. How are they coping with it, and how are you helping them cope with it?
I think for the bigger boys, so the teenagers, they are 13 and 14. We were a single family unit for a few years when they were little. That was almost what they knew. That was their comfort zone. And as much as they loved living in a busy household with 5 boys, with Russ, who they see as their stepdad, although they loved that, there is almost a sense of comfort in going back to our original unit. And as harsh as it may seem, and it's no reflection on my ex, it's getting their mum back to themselves.
Yeah.
And they really do appreciate that. Casper, who's little, who I share with Russ, he's a great ball of flexibility and fun. So at the moment, it's, he has his moments. I'm not going to pretend he doesn't have his moments where he's crying and I want daddy or I want mummy, or and he plays us off against each other, obviously.
Of course.
So there's all those. But at the moment, we split everything half and half. We're working together. So, yeah, it's all going as well as it could do.
I think that's it, isn't it? And it's the fact that you both managed to come together and say, okay, this has happened. It's not been, as you say, on social media, it looks very much like, oh, okay, they've split and that's it. It's not like that at all, and it's really deceptive. It's been a really long process for the pair of you, but you somehow managed to come together and say, okay, let's do this differently together while we're apart.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I know for people looking in from the outside, especially on Instagram, I sometimes get messages saying, well, are you split from him? Or aren't you? Is this forever? I hate to break it, you guys, we don't know. Quite often I think it's easy to think that social media is a bit of a soap opera, that it's scripted. But the reality is there are real people behind accounts, real feelings. And I know it's so annoying to say, oh, we're taking everything day by day. But
it's true.
It is true, yeah.
It is. It's mad how true that's become, especially in these COVID times. It's become, everything is day by day. Things change so fast, even down to like the homeschooling side of things. All of a sudden, we weren't, and we were sending all the kids back. And then from my perspective, I have 3 that are at primary school. I know yours are a bit older and maybe weren't going back anyway. But all 3 of mine were all of a sudden told 12 hours beforehand, actually, no, you're not back at school tomorrow. To wrap our minds around it was mad. I don't know how you've found homeschooling and that kind of thing. You've got so many different levels. You're smiling at me.
Oh God, first lockdown. I can still remember it really beautifully. That first day, I'd coloured in a timetable and I'd put it on the fridge. And 9 o'clock we went for our bike ride, and then we came back for quiet time and snack. I can still remember it now. I'm just reminiscing. It was so beautiful, my coloured in timetable. That got ditched around 2:17 p.m. that very first day when I suggested that everyone should go for a read. Go find a quiet spot and have a read. Who the hell was I kidding? Had I not lived with my own children for the last 14 years, did I suddenly think that in a pandemic they were going to be nice? No. So that was first lockdown. I had high expectations, which, over the period of, I don't even remember how long it was all the way until the summer holidays, I think. It gradually got dashed. The sun came out. I think even schools at that point, there wasn't this whole calling home to see where you were at registration. I think everyone was just, treading water. And I think that was accepted very much so. So the first lockdown, great hopes. Yet no one learned anything last year between, March 28th, whatever it was, until September. And gosh, why do I have a blackout when it comes to that last lockdown in autumn? It was a weird one. I think it contained half term.
The capacity thing of going, absolutely not, I refuse to remember this time. That'll be what it is.
Yeah, but this lockdown, and I almost feel like I'm almost cheating a bit. So Casper is very much homeschooling with me and Russ. And he's 5, he's pliable. You can bribe him with Percy Pigs. It's cheap bribery, it's quite easy. We're doing the basics. We're doing reading, phonics, and maths every day.
Phonics. Oh God,
yeah.
phonics.
Phonics with Rose. Rosie.
Why are they there? I don't know. I can't. I hate them with a passion. And Edith hates them as well. And she sits there and looks at me and she's like, I don't like this. I'm like, me neither, babe. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can't lie to you. I'm finding it hard this time because last time I had the timetable as well, but I did it really loosely. And it actually worked quite well for us because I need structure. And with them all being so little and not having anything coming in from school, particularly in those, especially for the first, 2 months, there was just nothing. No. And then all of a sudden school started to say, well, we want you to focus on maybe this topic, but get done what you can. Get done what you can.
It was quite a laissez-faire kind of approach first time round.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knew what they were doing. So I found it easier then because we were doing lots of things where we would go and we'd maybe use baking cookies for our maths thing or something. And they're little. You can't do that with teenagers. They're just going to look at you and go, absolutely not.
Yeah. Unless it's Xbox related, then no, it's just not happening.
Does that count as computer skills though? Because I would say it does.
Definitely. I am going to bag that one because my kids must be geniuses by now in that department. If they don't get an A in computer science, no, they're not even A's anymore, are they? Whatever, 10. A 10 in computer science.
Are they not A's?
No. They faffed around with that system a few years ago, just confuse everyone. And now all we do when the GCSE results come through is we get the numbers and we just look at what they relate to in letters.
Oh, no.
So we might as well all just use the letters because we're using the table to convert them back to the letters we all understand.
See, I didn't know this. I'll be honest, that terrifies me. I swear they change things, just mess with us. They have to. They never make it better.
They just make sure you're paying attention. It's because it's maths. It's why are there so many ways to make a sum? And it's not a sum anymore, it's a number sentence. And then just when you've got your number sentence down, let's do a part whole model. It's but that doesn't have a symbol in it, so how do I know what's happening? And then when you've done that, let's throw in a 10 grid, because that'll be a laugh, getting a kid to count that really slowly on a computer screen. So it's all right, we only want snack time at 10:30. I just want my cup of tea, but we're still counting on the 10 grid up to 50.
Yeah, exactly. It's so difficult, especially when you're doing different ages as well. I don't know if you found that your older boys can kind of just get on with it, but for me, I've got 3 different age groups, 2 of which can't really read that well. Toby's actually quite advanced with his reading. He's doing really well with it, but he doesn't want to. So therein lies the problem. But Ruben's doing great. He can do most of his stuff a bit more solo, but the other 2 are like, Mummy, Mummy. And I'm like, please just don't say my name, please. Anything other than Mummy.
Yeah. With the older boys, as I said, it does feel like I'm cheating a bit, especially this time round, because Hugo, my neurodiverse teenager who is 14, to give it some perspective, he's got a working diagnosis of autism with a side dish of PDA, which is demand avoidance. Oh. So anyone that doesn't know what that is, basically he has an anxiety-driven need to control, and any demands, as big or as small as they are, whether it's brush your teeth, put your shoes on, let alone sit down and do this piece of work, he will become overwhelmed and his brain is programmed to do everything to get out of that demand. If that involves punching a wall, swearing loudly, all the things that society says, that's not very nice, he will go down that route because that's generally the most effective route to get someone to back away. So trying to teach him in a pandemic when he was processing all of the outside information anyway, it was just a no-no. So after lots of months of not learning, going back to school, trying to deal with that, they have found him a place at an alternative provision that he goes to at the moment, which is just amazing. So for anyone that doesn't know, an alternative provision is kind of a bit of a last hope for kids that are in mainstream school, go and kind of reset their buttons. So that's where he is at the moment. So luckily he's getting a routine and he is somewhere until at least the Easter holidays.
That's so good.
It's really good. The best thing is it gets him out of my hair.
Yeah.
That's really good. So I feel like I'm cheating on that sense. I don't have him around because he can take up a lot of time just to get him out of bed, fed and moving, let alone, do you fancy doing some schoolwork?
That's going to be a no.
That's a big fat no with swears and outrage with it. Then I've got obviously the 13-year-old Bruno who just basically was following his brother's lead. Well, he's not doing it, so why do I have to do it?
Oh my goodness, yes, we've got that. Even at our age range of 9 and 8, they'll look and they'll be like, well, there's a year between us. What do you want from me? If he doesn't have to do it, I don't have to do it. And I'm like, but you're in different classes, please.
Yeah, so not only they're a year apart as well, 13 months, they're in different years. And obviously Hugo has a whole heap of additional needs
Yeah.
Bruno doesn't care. He's not taking that into account. He's just trying to work this to his advantage. So luckily for us, their secondary school have offered him a supported learning place in school, basically as a way of saying, you did nothing for 2020. We need to get you on track. But it's been really good in that he only goes in 3 days a week, but at least now he's been shown the expectations of what is expected from working at home. Before now, if I said you're supposed to be online between 9 and 3, he'd laugh at me and think no one else in the whole world was doing that, think that I was lying. So at least going in for his supported learning, he's seen, oh, actually, I get it now. He now knows how to log into all of those things. He now knows what he's supposed to be doing, when he's supposed to be doing it. So he goes in 3 days a week, and on the other 2 days, he actually does the work.
That's really good. It's on him then, isn't it? Not so much on you, because It feels like at the minute, everything is on us as parents, and again, I'm dealing with smaller children. In some instances, they are capable of doing the things that they've been given, but they're saying, well, can't you do it with me? Or can't you? And I know that children have been regressing quite a lot. I found it with my own kids. They've been regressing throughout lockdown, and things like wanting snuggles at bedtime when Edith would go to sleep fine before. We've had that kind of thing. And mummy, can you get me a drink, as opposed to just going and getting it themselves? Just very small things that, as you said before, they all end up amounting to bigger things. And it feels like it's very much on us. So to give him that independence, I suppose that's good for his mental health as well.
Yeah, and it just means that our relationship has got better, because otherwise I was the bad guy. I was the monster. I was fed up of being that person. I didn't want to nag and, shout and argue over, a geography project that really doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things. Sorry, whoever his geography teacher is. But yeah, it's relieved our relationship and meant I can be his mum again. I can parent him through that. The same with Hugo. I don't have to be their teacher now. And because that was never a role I was meant to be. And being a teenager's teacher is not something I ever wanted to be. Well done to all the secondary school teachers out there. So yes, I can be their mum again, and that's mattered most, because especially going through everything that we've been through, and I can't minimise it, but at the same time, I know lots of people have been through more, but with moving house, separations and all those things, they can't be played down, even though boys in particular, I think, won't necessarily show it. As you say, they'll show it in the little ways, they'll regress. Casper might use a baby voice to try and, just get back to that space. So I can't take away from that, and being the parent again puts everything slightly back on an even keel.
Yeah, I think, as you say, that's one of the things that I've found the hardest, is that I don't feel like I've had the opportunity to be mum as much. And then come the weekend, I'm completely burnt out, and I almost don't want to be. And then I feel so guilty, and I don't feel like I've had the opportunity to just be me, or to be a wife, or to do all of the normal things, if you like, that are in everyday relationships. Forget sort of going out shopping or going to the zoo or any of those things that, yes, okay, we've missed. It's actually just being able to fit into those roles that you're comfortable with. I don't know what you found to be the hardest thing, but that's been for me one of them.
Maybe obviously I found being a wife girlfriend partner the most difficult, so I called it a day on that. But it kind of was. We both looked at it as the adults. We looked at our situation and worked out, well, I was being teacher, or trying my best at the time, teacher, mum, working full time, housekeeper, all of these roles, and partner was just one too many. I've only got a certain amount of energy in a day. And unfortunately for Russ, as the other adult, he came last down that very long list. So yeah, for me, obviously being someone's partner was just one step too far. So removed that from the equation. And again, I do think I'm very, very lucky in that I co-parent Casper with Russell. So I have 3 days in my week where I can focus on the teenagers, who anyone else that's got teenagers will know don't actually see them that much, or at least mine. So there's a bit of space there to catch up with work. I say be myself and do stuff myself. I don't. I catch up on other things. But I've got that bit of space, and that feels really, really like a luxury, which I know lots of people don't have. And I don't want to be a smug moo about it.
I don't want to be a smug moo. I honestly, I get that. I think one thing that I've found, and you've done it several times there in our chat, is compare your situation to others and sort of downplay it a bit and be like, oh, others have got it worse. And we know they have. On a logical level, that there's always going to be somebody who's worse off. I don't think it minimises what we're going through. If you kind of sit back and go, oh, but others have got this worse. And then where do you go from there? You keep telling yourself that it's not that bad, then you compound it, I think, and it feels like you've not given yourself the value that you should have done, I guess.
Yeah, I find at least acknowledging, even if I don't necessarily, I definitely don't like to harp on kind of to too many other people about like, oh, everything we've been through. But I do, whether it's privately or, with Russ or maybe with my mum, I acknowledge everything that's happened. That's for sure. I certainly am never going to sweep it under the carpet. Too many years of therapy taught me the backlash of that. So I acknowledge it. I acknowledge the fact that we've separated. It's hard. This is how it's probably going to affect the children. Look out for it and then move on.
I think that's really key, isn't it? It's the moving on. And do you and Russ have a better, I suppose it's more like a working relationship now as parents, now that you're apart?
Yeah, definitely. I always found that when I live with, gosh, I'm going to sound so hateful.
Go on, say it.
When I live with a man, my partner, I've only really lived with the father of my children, so this is where it really stems from. I get so resentful of them. I get so resentful of the fact they do anything. If they move, if they sit down for more than 2 minutes when I'm cooking dinner, I want to literally stab them with daggers from my eyes. It's not healthy. It's really not. Whereas living separately, as you say, it's more of a working relationship. We do very much still love each other and like each other, but it's more logistical. It's practical. It's right, I'm working until 3 today, so then I can pick him up from here. Or would it work best if I picked him up from you? It's nicer. It's pleasant. It's not snappy and just kind of point scoring.
Do I think that's relationships, especially throughout the pandemic. It almost feels like there is that bubbling resentment with each other. And I think Adam and I worked really well as a team last time, and that was great. But still, you could see sometimes each of us looking at each other and being like, well, why are you doing that? Can we just not? And getting snippier with each other. And it's when you need to know to draw the line of when that becomes too much and it's not working for any of you anymore, as to when that's just normal as a part of a relationship and you maybe need to just take each other off. I think what we found was when lockdown opened up a bit, when we could go off and just be Adam and Harriet together, that made such a difference. And then you start to think, well, God, I don't want to blame, it's not the kids' fault that I'm doing this, but it is just the pressures of everything. And as you say, that extra role just becomes one too many. And I suppose it's reminding each other, isn't it, of that degree of separation that you've got now is working well for you as a family. If that's what works, then that's what works, isn't it?
I've had so many messages and conversations with people online that I think particularly with blended families, I've noticed that the messages more that they've tried to blend, they've lived together. It's not that they don't all like each other. It's just that being in one house is just too much.
Yeah.
And it's not just a physical space thing. It's a mental and emotional space. And a blended family coming from so many different other places with other parents, other people's baggage, emotions, coming together, different rules, different boundaries, different ways of parenting, so many variants in one house. It's a pressure cooker. And so I've spoken with so many other blended families that have gone down this route, that it's not that they're completely separated, end of, done deal. It's just that for the time being, separate houses and separate lives to a certain degree is what is needed. It's not to say it's forever, it's just for now.
It's a really mature way of looking at a problem and solving it to work for everybody, isn't it? And I love that. Something I've always admired about you and your blog posts is your honesty around being a stepmom. So in the way that you are now, how are you finding that that's affecting your relationship with your stepchildren? Do you have one with them at the minute, or have you kind of stepped back? How's that going?
It's an odd one, because since I started the blog, or since we even got together, Noah and Marley, who are my two stepsons, they started out at 10 and 11, but like children do, they grew up. Noah's nearly 19. He works pretty much full time. Marley is nearly 17. He's at college in his bedroom, technically.
Yeah.
But they've turned into young men. They're Noah is an adult, so they're not so much children anymore. So I occasionally get messages saying, oh, where are Noah and Marley? Now adults, they're all doing their own thing. Yeah, Noah's learning to drive. They're going off and about. They're not kids anymore. So we have a really, really fond relationship of each other. I obviously love them incredibly, but like it will be with my own children, it morphs from being a really mothering role when they're children. When they were with me, they obviously have a mother that is, great with them, but then they're now adults. I can now become more of that friend that is in a trusted role that they know will be there. I'll admit it's a much easier relationship to have, because step parenting is not the parenting that anyone ever wanted to do. No one ever sets out as a kid, when they've got their daydreams of, whether it's white dresses or, getting married and having 2.4s. No one ever says, I can't wait to take on someone else's kids and all of that emotional baggage and train wreck that's happened before. That just sounds like so much fun.
I love that you say that though, because so many people are afraid of actually just coming out with it. And it's true. Who sits there and goes, do you know what I'm looking for in a partner? Someone with kids who don't like me and will make my life really difficult. That's where I'm goaling for. Yes. Nobody does it. It's almost taboo to say, do you know what, actually, this is really hard. It's not where I saw myself being. And I don't like it very much half the time.
I think it's really important that people notice, the same with parenting, that just because you don't like step parenting doesn't mean you don't like the children. I found step mothering, I hated it. I found it really difficult, really hard. That was no reflection on my stepsons. And I think that's where people have got to understand there's a difference. In the same way with parenting, you can find parenting really, really hard. It doesn't mean you don't love your child. So that's the difference I've tried to really make. Not everyone understands that. Everyone immediately hears, oh, she doesn't like being a stepmom, and immediately thinks, oh, wicked stepmother. She must be horrid, maleficent over there.
Yeah, there's that stereotype, isn't there? I mean, I had a really bad relationship with my own stepmom. I didn't have a good relationship with her at all, to the point where she would just be referred to by myself as my dad's second wife. Horrible. I mean, admittedly, she was also horrible. She wasn't a particularly nice person, but I don't think I ever did anything to make it easier for her. We clashed completely. And I think in those initial days, it was her trying and thinking, right, okay, this is the situation. I'm going to have to, pull up my britches here. And me just going, pour my drink. You don't like me. Let's see how this goes. And we didn't get on at all. And it caused real damage with my relationship with my dad, with my relationship with her. And it was really difficult. And I think, again, it has to come from both sides as well. You have to be trying, but at the same time, if you're faced with a child that really does not like you, full stop, and will not accept you, and has got a mother who is also making it difficult for that child to accept you, then I think for your own mental health, it's got to be okay to turn around and go, do you know what, actually, I'm not enjoying this, and that's okay. And to have other people who will acknowledge that you're not this evil stepmother, but this is hard and it's okay not to be doing it well and not enjoying it and getting on with it.
Yeah, I mean, quite early on. I mean, I persevered. That sounds awful. But, I persevered with the Susie Homemaker for a good 2-3 years, sort of insisting that, family meals, when all the boys were over, we'd all eat the same thing and all those kind of things. And after a while, Russ and I just decided, both with him with my boys and me with his boys, because there were two step parents going on, there were two dynamics. We decided it was best for everyone, not just us as people, parents, but also the kids, that we very much parented our own children.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying this works for everyone, and I know some people might find it weird because they feel like, if you're going to blend a family, blend it. But for us, parenting our own children, even cooking their own meals, especially for his two boys that were coming from their mums, not so often, they weren't with us all the time, that kind of thing. One of the points, and it wasn't out of malice, I just didn't make spaghetti bolognese like their mum, or I didn't have the particular brand of beans that they wanted on the jacket potato. It just wasn't home. That's all it is. It wasn't that they were being nasty, it was just, I wasn't mum, and although it was one of their homes and we always made it such, it wasn't, what they were used to. So it just got to the point of, you cook Noah Marley's dinners, that's fine. So, Russell had a very small repertoire that luckily would just about cover the days that they would be over. And I'd cook for my boys. Similarly with kind of, discipline, all those things. And that's how we got through step parenting.
Yeah, I love that. Again, it's that looking at your own family and going, what works here for us? Forget the norm, forget the expectation, what's going to work for us? And I think that's crucial, isn't it? Because no family, whether they're blended or not, is ever the same, ever. And I think if that works for you, then that's what works for you. Going back to lockdown wise, have you found anything that has been really positive about the whole experience? But have you found anything at all that stood out to you and gone, do you know what, actually, that wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for this, and it's a good thing?
I mentioned it in a post actually the other day that it's stopped the rat run, it stopped the rush, and I've got to actually see my children. And I don't mean physically see them around, because trust me, they're always around somewhere. I see them when my eyes are shut. But I mean actually see them for the people they are. See them in all sorts of scenarios and without so much outside input. input, see their personalities, what makes them tick, how many snacks they can consume in a 24-hour period. That's blown my mind. Yeah. And especially, I guess, more so with Hugo, my neurodiverse teen, because when we're on the rat run, it's easy to lose him amongst all the chaos sometimes. He will quite happily shut himself in his room. But yeah, so really getting to see the kids and try to create more of a life that helps them flourish. Oh God, that sounds so cheesy.
I get it. I guess it does sound cheesy to say you get lost amongst life, but you can. And, you know, we're all individuals. Even if they're at that young age, they're still individuals. They're going to have quirks. They're going to have things that you maybe miss because everything's so fast paced. I think modern society is incredibly fast paced, so much more so than it's ever been. We've got everything at our fingertips, and to suddenly have nothing and everything just hit the pause button, especially in the first lockdown when it really was everything, even down to like dentists and things. Adam needed some dental treatment at one point and he couldn't get anything. He couldn't go anywhere. He ended up having to wait, I think it was 5 days. Just everything stopped, everything. And I think that pause, that hitting the button, really casts a highlight onto who you are as a person, but also who your kids are as people, and not just as your kids, but as people in their own right.
Yeah.
So I get that. I completely get that.
And especially with boys, I mean, they're so competitive. My older two, they're quite high achievers in sports and football and all those kind of things. So constantly striving for the best, like all about achievement and the next goal and getting the Chelsea Academy trial. There was constantly some sort of achievement they were aiming at. That's all been stripped back. There's none of that. No one can get that Chelsea Academy trial at the moment. It's all been taken away. And so what you're left with is focusing on what actually makes them a whole person and makes them happy. Because I don't think the Chelsea Academy trials, it certainly didn't make Bruno very happy. It made him quite sick.
Oh, that's it.
And so all of these achievements that they were striving for in this constant competition, it's been taken away, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
It doesn't sound like it's a bad thing. It doesn't sound like it's a bad thing at all when you put it like that. Just taking it away and allowing them to be themselves.
Yeah.
So with everything that you've been through, absolutely all of it, all of your combined experiences through this,
Gosh.
have you got any tips for anyone who is going through similar or who is looking at their partner and going, no?
If someone's in a similar situation with regards to their partner and looking at them and just thinking, oh, I hate you. But at the same time, you still love them. I'd always try and talk it through before the resentment boils over, obviously, because you can come to some sort of really workable solution before you hate each other. I've done it both ways. I've got to the point where I hated someone, my first husband, and got divorced, and it was just toxic and nasty, and it didn't, it hasn't ended well, and the boys don't see their dad. Or Russ and I both, we'd been in that situation with our previous marriages, with our first marriages. We knew better. We learned from that experience. And so if I could pass on that experience to anyone and just say, cut your losses before it gets to the point where you hate each other.
Don't let it bubble. Don't let it boil.
Yeah.
Talk it if you can. And if you both agree that it's just not working, then find something that does. And if that means apart, then that means apart. I think that's really sound advice, because I'm a child whose parents let it get to that point. And it was horrible from a child's perspective. They really didn't like each other. They were not fans. They hated each other with fiery passion. And I think probably because they still loved each other in a way, but could never really express it. And I think that made it harder for both of them. And there was lots of things that happened around their own divorce that I think from a child's perspective, being able to have parents that have done what you and Russ have done and said, okay, look, this is not working. This is where we think we're going wrong. How about we try this and we try this and we find something that works for us? I think that's a huge tip that hopefully, if people listen,
it's difficult putting it into practice, isn't it?
It is. It's so much more difficult than I think anybody can actually imagine. We all get to that point in our relationship where things are on that dip. I think I'm a true believer that relationships are real roller coasters. You have the highest of highs, but you're also going to have those lows where you're looking and thinking, this is hard. This is not as fun as I expected. This is not what it was 2 or 3 years ago. And it's working through it together in a way that works for you that I think makes all the difference. So I think that's a good tip.
Thanks.
I think that's a good tip. Whenever I finish a podcast relating to my book, which is full of lots of mum hacks and mum tips and just things that generally make your life easier, what would your one mum hack be? And I am talking anything from how to get the dirt off football boots, because if you've got any knowledge on that, I would be very grateful.
Mine is Percy Pigs and bribery. That's it. That's all I got. I think to say that I'd have a hack would mean that I have in some way outsmarted the kids. And to be honest, I'm outnumbered and I'm outsmarted. I haven't hacked my way to anything in 14 years of parenthood other than bribery and Percy Pigs.
I think bribery and Percy Pigs sounds like a really good hack, to be honest. That to me sounds like the ultimate hack. Ours for doing phonics earlier was some biscuits that we'd made yesterday. She had about 5, and I've got in the back of my mind the dentist looking at me going, we did talk about snacks. And I know I shouldn't have done it, but it's the only way to survive. So I think bribery is the ultimate mum hack, and I'm happy to go with that.
That's all I've got for you.
Well, thank you so much for chatting to me. If you do want to find Jess, what is it, Jess?
The only girl in the house.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Harriet.